The polished floors of Orchid Bay International Airport gleamed under the harsh morning lights, reflecting a restless sea of briefcases, rolling luggage, and high-stakes ambition. Over at Gate 14, the velvet rope guarding the first-class boarding lane swayed slightly in the blast of cool air from the jetway. Amid the blur of designer suits and whispered conference calls, Jonas and Evelyn Carter moved with an unshakable grace. Silver hair gleaming, shoes polished but modest, hands clasped like they carried secrets no one else could touch. At the head of the line, Samantha Reed stood rigid, clipboard clutched like a badge of judgment. She barely glanced up, already deciding who belonged and who didn't. In her mind, first class wasn't a ticket, it was a pedigree. What happened next would shatter the illusion of control she clung to, and by the time she realized her mistake, it would already be too late. The morning churned with noise inside Orchid Bay International, heels clicked across polished marble, overhead announcements crackled through the intercom, and the heavy scent of jet fuel bled into the sterile air. At Gate 14, the first-class lane gleamed like a promise, velvet ropes cordoning off a world meant only for the elite. Jonas Carter adjusted the cuff of his charcoal blazer, a man whose every slow, deliberate step whispered authority earned through decades, not dollars. Beside him, Evelyn Carter sipped quietly from a paper cup, her pearl earrings catching the light, her calm smile carved by years of battles fought and won. Together they moved like a force of nature disguised in simplicity, their presence commanding attention without ever demanding it. At the head of the gate, Samantha Reed scanned the crowd with a hawk's precision, clipboard in one hand, a manicured finger tapping anxiously against its spine. 35, sharp-edged by survival, she had clawed her way out of poverty and built her career on reading people at a glance. And to Samantha, these two didn't fit. They didn't flaunt wealth, they didn't drip privilege. They weren't the image of first class she had spent her life chasing. A flicker of irritation tightened her jaw. She barely registered the boarding passes extended toward her. Instead, she smiled thinly, stepping into their path like a wall in a perfectly ironed uniform. "This lane's for first class only," she said, her voice even rehearsed. Evelyn's hand paused mid-air. Jonas didn't flinch. He simply tilted his head, studying Samantha with a calm that felt more dangerous than rage. And as the moment stretched, unnoticed by the others, the first quiet crack appeared, one that would soon split the day wide open. Samantha's smile tightened into a line as she motioned toward the economy lane without even glancing at the Carters' tickets. Around them, the low murmur of boarding passengers swelled, the hum of privilege and impatience vibrating through the air like static. Jonas extended the boarding passes once more, his fingers steady. Evelyn's eyes didn't flicker from Samantha's face. A silence thicker than the humid air between jetways stretched. "Ma'am," Jonas said evenly, "we're exactly where we're supposed to be." Samantha exhaled sharply, as if fending off a nuisance. "I don't think so," she clipped, stepping closer, her badge gleaming coldly under the fluorescent lights. "This is reserved for our premium guests." Behind them, a tall man in a navy brioni suit was ushered through without a second glance, the scent of expensive cologne trailing in his wake. Samantha barely nodded at him, her demeanor softening instantly, a stark contrast that didn't go unnoticed by the nearby passengers. From the side, a teenage boy holding a phone discreetly captured the scene, live streaming it onto a growing ripple of social media feeds. "Dude, this is not gonna end well," he muttered under his breath. Evelyn tilted her head slightly, her pearl earring catching the light again, a tiny, elegant warning. Jonas's jaw flexed once, subtle but unmistakable. Still, Samantha pressed on, voice raised just enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "If you can't produce proper documentation, I'll have to ask you to step aside for priority boarding." A beat. Then Evelyn, serene but sharp, offered a single reply. "We suggest you check your list." Samantha's hand tightened around her clipboard. Her instincts screamed to double-check, but pride, years in the making, forced her to stand firm. And just like that, the fuse was lit. And the explosion was inevitable. The gate area crackled with uneasy energy, like a storm brewing just beyond sight. Passengers slowed their steps, glancing sideways. The businessman who had breezed through earlier paused near the jetway, frowning. The teenage boy's live stream ticked upward in viewers, every second pulling more attention to the confrontation unfolding at Gate 14. Samantha squared her shoulders, flashing a brittle smile. "Security will be here momentarily," she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her tone was clipped, defensive, as if she could cement authority with volume alone. Jonas exchanged a glance with Evelyn, silent, effortless communication forged over decades. Evelyn's lips curved into something almost amused, almost sorrowful. At the edge of the velvet rope, Emily Dawson stood frozen, white-knuckling her clipboard. She had triple-checked the manifest that morning. Jonas Carter, Evelyn Carter, first class, confirmed. Her voice stuck in her throat, terror rooting her to the floor. The crowd tightened around them, a circle of polished shoes and flashing phones. Whispers floated, "Did you see how she treated them? Don't they look important?" In the corner of Samantha's vision, the uniformed security officer approached. Relief flickered through her, but quickly soured when she caught the uncertainty in his expression. Jonas spoke then, his voice low but powerful enough to ripple through the air. "Last chance, Miss Reed," he said. "Look, address the list." Samantha's pulse thundered in her ears. She couldn't back down now. She had built her career on certainty, on knowing who belonged. Without another word, she turned her back on them, waving the officer forward. It was a fatal mistake, because the next move would not just expose her assumptions, it would shatter them, publicly, irrevocably. The security officer slowed as he reached the Carters, uncertainty flickering across his face. His radio crackled uselessly at his side. In his hand, he held the passenger manifest, freshly printed, edges still warm. Jonas didn't move. Evelyn simply smiled, a patient, devastating curve of her lips. Samantha, standing rigid like a soldier before battle, barked, "They're not listed properly. Remove them from first class immediately." The officer hesitated, flipping open the manifest with a grimace. His eyes scanned the list once, twice, and then froze. The air changed. He straightened slowly, his entire posture shifting from casual authority to stiff, reverent tension. "Mr. Jonas Carter, Mrs. Evelyn Carter," he read aloud, voice cracking under pressure, "founders and principal owners of Celestia Air." The terminal went silent. Even the teenager with the live stream forgot to breathe, his phone dangling in the air. Samantha blinked, lips parting in confusion, a sick twist tightening in her gut. "No, that's..." she stammered, but the words died mid-air. The businessman by the jetway let out a slow, deliberate whistle. Someone dropped their coffee cup with a sharp crack. Evelyn stepped forward, eyes never leaving Samantha's crumbling facade. "You see," she said, voice velvet and razor wire at once, "when you assume who belongs and who doesn't, you gamble your future." Jonas folded his arms, gaze like a hammer dropping, "And you just lost." Samantha stumbled back a half step, the clipboard slipping from her fingers, slapping the floor with a hollow thud. The security officer, caught between protocol and sheer disbelief, cleared his throat. "Sir, ma'am," he said, almost bowing, "we apologize, deeply." The surrounding passengers whispered now, no longer trying to hide their judgment. In the rising tide of murmurs and flashing phones, Samantha stood trapped under the crushing weight of her own arrogance, realizing, far too late, that she hadn't just humiliated two ordinary passengers. She had humiliated her employers. And the reckoning was just beginning. The tension cracked like a whip across Gate 14. Every eye was on Samantha now, no longer the enforcer of order, but the centerpiece of a spiraling disaster. The businessman leaned against the wall, arms crossed, shaking his head slowly. The teenager's live stream counter ticked upward, the whole airport seeming to lean closer, hungrier for the next blow. Samantha opened her mouth to speak, an apology, a protest, she wasn't sure, but nothing came out. Her throat locked tight under the unbearable weight of humiliation. Evelyn's gaze was merciless but calm, a mirror reflecting Samantha's every failing back at her. "You didn't even ask for our names," Evelyn said quietly, each word slicing through the heavy air. "You saw what you wanted to see, and you acted on it." Jonas stepped forward, his presence radiating authority like a low gathering storm. "Tell me, Ms. Reed," he said, voice steady, "if we had looked a little different today." If our suits had glittered and our jewelry had screamed wealth, would you have treated us the same? Samantha flinched, visibly shrinking under the spotlight. She knew the answer. Everyone watching knew it too. Emily Dawson stepped forward from the shadows, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry. I checked the list, she said, guilt bleeding through every syllable. I knew who they were, but I didn't speak up. Jonas turned to her, his expression softening, a crack in the stern armor. It takes courage to speak truth, he said, offering a brief, solemn nod. More than it takes to follow a uniform. The teenage boy whispered into his phone, "Man, this is brutal." The security officer stood silent, shifting uncomfortably, aware that no amount of protocol could fix what had just unfolded. Samantha bowed her head, hands twisting uselessly at her sides. There was no hiding now. She had been judged, not by a checklist, not by a dress code, but by something far harsher, the truth. And the sentence would come not from an official report, but from every silent, condemning gaze now burning into her. The air in Gate 14 turned heavy, almost viscous, like a courtroom moments before a verdict. Jonas Carter didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His authority was a force all its own. "You have two choices, Ms. Reed," he said, each word falling like a gavel. "Choice 1, resign immediately. Leave with whatever dignity you believe you still have." He paused just long enough for the silence to tighten like a noose. "Choice 2, stay. Face the consequences, and prove, if you even can, that you are worth salvaging." The businessman whistled low under his breath. The teenager's live-stream comment section exploded in real time. "This is savage." Samantha's legs wobbled. She gripped the edge of the check-in podium as if it could anchor her to a reality slipping fast through her fingers. Her mind screamed to run, to quit, disappear, hide. But somewhere deep beneath the panic, a different voice stirred. The same voice that once drove her out of a crumbling neighborhood. The one that pushed her to claw her way into first-class life. Pride had built her armor, but it was humility now, raw and brutal, that might save her. She choked, forcing herself to meet Jonas's unblinking stare. "I want to stay." A ripple of reaction moved through the gathered crowd. Jonas nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Then understand this," Evelyn said, stepping forward, her voice low but slicing through the tension like a blade. "This won't be easy. You will undergo mandatory training on bias and professionalism, starting tomorrow. You will be held to a standard 10 times higher than before, and you will rebuild trust, passenger by passenger, moment by moment." Samantha's throat tightened. She managed a small, broken nod. "You're not being given mercy," Jonas added. "You're being given a mirror." And as Gate 14 slowly resumed its hum of boarding calls and rolling suitcases, Samantha realized the real punishment wasn't losing her job. It was confronting who she had become, and who she would have to fight to be. The boarding announcements crackled overhead, slicing through the heavy silence that clung to Gate 14. Passengers began to shuffle forward again, but their eyes lingered on Samantha like spotlights trailing a fallen star. Samantha forced herself to stand tall, though every muscle in her body screamed to disappear into the crowd. Her clipboard still lay abandoned on the floor, a small, pathetic symbol of how completely she had lost control. Emily Dawson hesitated near the jetway, her expression torn between sympathy and something harder, expectation. She had seen it all. Everyone had. Evelyn Carter stepped closer, her voice low but unmistakable. "Your real work starts now," she said, her words threading directly into Samantha's core. "Not to impress us, not to save your reputation, but to become the person you thought you already were." Jonas offered a final nod, something weighted with both warning and hope. Then, with the quiet dignity that had defined them from the start, the Carters turned and disappeared down the boarding ramp. No fanfare, no entourage, no vindictive glances over their shoulders. They didn't need to look back. The weight of their judgment and their unexpected mercy would follow Samantha everywhere she went. Slowly, Samantha stooped to pick up the clipboard, her hands trembling. When she stood again, the world hadn't magically forgiven her. The businessman still regarded her with a skeptical arch of his brow. The teenager still whispered into his phone, narrating the fallout for hundreds, maybe thousands online. But something inside Samantha had shifted. She turned to Emily, swallowing hard. "I should have listened," she said quietly. "Next time, I will." Emily offered a hesitant smile, small but real. "Next time, you speak up too," she said. And with that, Samantha moved to the boarding line, her movements slower, more deliberate. She checked each passenger's ticket with care, not scanning for jewelry or designer labels, but for names. Names she promised herself she would see, truly see this time. As she waved the next family through, her chest tightened with the understanding that redemption wasn't a destination waiting at the end of a flight. It was a brutal, grueling journey. One decision, one interaction, one apology, at a time. Somewhere beyond the glass wall of the terminal, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a pale, stubborn light across the tarmac. And for the first time in years, Samantha Reed stepped into that light without hiding behind her uniform. Sometimes the harshest lessons come wrapped not in anger, but in unexpected mercy. Samantha Reed thought she understood people. She thought she could read them with a glance, sort them neatly into categories. First class, economy, worthy, forgettable. It was a defense mechanism forged in her own struggles. A girl from the wrong side of town, clawing her way into spaces no one had ever saved for her. But survival isn't the same thing as understanding, and judgment, even born from pain, can quietly evolve into something cruel. On that ordinary morning at Orchid Bay International, Samantha faced the mirror she had spent years avoiding. The Carters weren't just wealthy passengers, they weren't just powerful names. They were living proof that dignity, grace, and success don't come in prepackaged images. And Samantha realized something that cut deeper than humiliation. She had become exactly what she had once hated. A gatekeeper who mistook appearances for worth. This story reminds us that assumptions are lazy replacements for truth. It's easier to judge at a glance than to lean in and listen. It's easier to dismiss than to ask. But every time we do, we lose something vital, not just about others, but about ourselves. Respect isn't a reward for wearing the right clothes or flashing the right credit card. It's the starting point. Human dignity isn't earned through optics. It's owed to every soul who crosses our path. And real strength, the kind that builds better communities, better companies, better lives, isn't in enforcing walls. It's in having the courage to tear them down, even when the bricks were laid by our own hands. Samantha's journey didn't end with a public shaming or a dramatic firing. Her true punishment and her true opportunity was harder, facing herself. Every day she chose to stay, to learn, to change. She was confronting the small, invisible biases that had once felt so natural they were almost invisible. And every day she resisted the easy comfort of judgment. She stepped a little closer to becoming the woman she thought she already was. In a world that moves faster every second, it's tempting to make snap judgments, to categorize, to filter. But the world needs fewer gatekeepers and more bridges. It needs more people willing to see beyond suits and jewelry, beyond skin color and wrinkles, beyond first impressions and old fears. Because the truth is simple, the person you dismiss today might be the one writing your future tomorrow. The quiet woman in worn shoes might own the building you're standing in. The man without a designer label might carry more wisdom and power than you could measure in dollars or degrees. And when we fail to see people, truly see them, we don't just risk humiliation. We risk losing the very humanity that binds us together. This story isn't just about Samantha Reed, it's about every one of us. Every time we choose curiosity over assumption, humility over pride, respect over judgment, we don't just make someone else's journey lighter. We make our own path richer, fuller, and more worthy of the future we claim to want. Because dignity isn't something you give based on status. It's something you give because it defines who you are. And sometimes the greatest redemption doesn't come from being saved by others. It comes from daring to save yourself. One choice at a time, one moment at a time, one act of seeing, truly seeing at a time. As the final passengers drifted down the jetway and the airport's noise swallowed the morning once more, Samantha Reed stood alone behind the podium. The world around her had moved on, but inside something fundamental had shifted. She straightened her uniform, not to reclaim control, but to carry herself differently, with awareness, not assumption. Every future interaction would carry the weight of this moment, a silent reminder that true leadership begins with humility, not pride. Some mistakes leave bruises, others leave blueprints. Today had carved a blueprint into Samantha's bones, a map leading her not to comfort, but to growth. Somewhere, far beyond the glass walls of the terminal, Jonas and Evelyn Carter disappeared into the light, leaving no demands, no threats, only the kind of silent expectation that transforms lives, not through force, but through the undeniable gravity of truth. And as Samantha looked out over the gate, she realized redemption wouldn't be won with grand gestures. It would be built in the quiet moments, one boarding pass at a time, one name at a time, one choice, one heartbeat at a time. And for the first time in a long time, Samantha believed she might just be ready, really ready, to begin.